Hello, and welcome to today's program of Between Friends. I'm excited to share with you my tips for quilting jackets on an embroidery machine. You know, it's kind of been the rage for the past 2 years. If you've missed it, you can just search on Google or YouTube to see all the beautiful things, all the beautiful jackets that people are making. And of course, we're going to do it on our embroidery machine, right? Because we have those snap hoop monsters. We have big sewing fields. You don't have to have a big sewing field. You can start with a 5x7 and still quilt with your embroidery machine. So what are those topics that we're really going to hit? We're going to talk about the pattern selection, because that's really key to a quilted jacket. We'll discuss fabric, the embroidery designs, and then finally the hooping. Because, you know, it's a quilt, right? It's a quilt before it's a jacket. So first we have to start with that. But please let us know where you're watching from. Rita Ranke, I saw that you were the first one to sign in, and you haven't had snow up there in central Wyoming in a week, right? In a week. Can you imagine? In a week. Well, she's happy. She says, yeah, it's 24 degrees. In Texas, you know, we can go a year or two without it. So anyway, hello, C. Lombard. Nice to have you in the house. I haven't heard from you for a while, so it's lovely to have you here. And Star Raymond, another a friendly face that we know. So let us know where you are. Also in the comments, let me know, have you made a quilted jacket yet? Are you thinking about it? Are you a little maybe apprehensive in doing this? But anyway, let's see. Ann Philback, you always think of Joanne Banco when it comes to embroidering jackets. Why not? She does beautiful embroidered jackets. Whether she starts with a blank, like a denim jacket, or creates her own garments, you know, she is a sewist from the get-go. She did that before she started embroidery, so she's quite talented under the needle for sure. I know in Designs and Machine Embroidery magazine for many years we published so many of her beautiful garments, and several were jackets for sure. So let's see. Oh, and she's in the house. There she is. Happy Thursday, everyone. Nice to have you here, Joanne. Thanks for joining us. Let's see. Cheryl Carpenter. Oh, I just missed your Cheryl Carpenter. You said that you did make a quilted jacket and you used a panel. Why not, right? If you love the design on the panel, why not do that? Today, I'm going to be talking about a whole cloth, pretty much a whole cloth jacket. But next week, we'll talk about blocks and how to handle that, because that's a whole different thing. Let's see. And Rita Ranke, you have embroidered one denim jacket. It took 6 hours. Well, believe it or not, quilting and enough fabric to make a jacket will probably take you less than that, 6 hours, because the beauty of most quilting designs is they're one color and they stitch in a heartbeat under normally about 3, maybe 5 minutes at the most. So, okay. And let's go ahead over to PowerPoint so we can kind of get started. So these are our topics, right? Pattern, fabric, and design selection. And of course, planning the quilting is really key. And that first hooping also is pretty important. Maybe you're guessing, what's the product that's on sale this week? Well, that would be Snap Hoop Monster. And, you know, we only do this sale a couple times a year. So if you've been waiting to get a new hoop, or even if you've been hesitant and have not purchased a magnetic hoop, this is the time, because they're on sale and you'll get free shipping. So we're going to be working in a 9x14 hoop, but actually the embroidery designs that I'm going to show you come in both 5x7, 8x12, 7x12, and 8x12. So you can go as big as you'd like. All right. So let's first discuss the pattern. And what you're going to look for there is a simple pattern. You don't want a lot of tailoring details like darts or welted pockets, especially if you're maybe your first foray into jacket making. You most certainly can add welted pockets into a quilted jacket. But if this is going to be a garment that I would consider kind of a knock-around garment, you know, that you'll get a lot of wear out of, maybe you don't want to try to tackle that welded pocket. So this butterick pattern on the left is a Marcy Tilton pattern, and it's a current pattern. I believe it's available on Butterick's website. As I was scrolling through their website, I thought that would be an interesting selection. It's got a zipper, which could make that opening easy to do. And then also that Berta has a hood. I think maybe I would eliminate the hood, but many of you in colder areas, you most certainly could add a hood. The nice thing about adding a hood to a quilted jacket is that seam in the back around the neck can be rather attractive. Unlike adding a collar, sometimes that can look a little clunky unless you have really good sewing skills. But I like that style of the Berta on the right, where it's it's free form, so that you're going to have some space for all that bulk. Remember, quilts are 3 layers. And as we talk about fabric and batting, we might as well just hit batting right now. In my jacket, actually used 100% wool batting. I have done another sample in 100% cotton batting. And on sleeves, or on one jacket that I've been working on, I used cotton flannel as the batting. Instead of batting, I just use cotton, because this jacket isn't intended to be worn in central Wyoming, like where Aretha Ranke lives. I live in Texas. It doesn't get all that cold here. So 3 layers of cotton fabric as an overgarment is probably enough. And I just didn't want to add all that extra bulk. Okay. Joanne Banco, how kind of you to say Writing for Designs magazine really helped you stretch your creative skills. Well, it helped us all stretch our creative skills. I know it most certainly did for me. And, the magazine grew with the industry. We were the first embroidery magazine on the market. And when home and machine embroidery was just brand new to the user. And, we jumped right in and we all grew together. So, and we miss it a little bit, like I know many of you do. But, here we are every week. That never would have happened if we were still publishing a magazine. Okay, so what pattern did I actually choose for this garment? Well, I used Grainline Studios Tamarick Jacket. And this is a downloadable pattern. And the main pattern is on the left, and it's just an open front, and it does have welted pockets. But on the right, you can add on an extra pattern to it that includes a collar, a hood, and patch pockets instead of the welted pockets. So that's what I chose, because it's simple, really simplistic, and it was downloadable. So why don't we go over to the overhead so you can take a look at what I mean by downloadable. You literally, just go to Grainline Studio. Now, I don't have any relationship with this designer, but I've read a lot that, many people endorse this pattern. I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. It comes with all of these instructions, illustrated very well, really clearly written. And then it gives you a schematic for printing the pattern, because you're going to print it at home. If you print it at home, you'll do it on 8.5 by 11 paper. And each of these numbers that you see is a piece of paper, and it shows you how to tile it and tape it together. You also have the option of downloading a print file for a wide format printer to take to like a print shop, and they would print it for you in one big piece. But you know me, I'm working at 10 o'clock at night and I'm not going to a print shop. I'm going to do it right there. Of course, it has all the sizing, all of that, so you know what size to make. And here it is. So here are my pages. This is the bodice front, and I've taped them together, following her directions. And then I made a muslin, which I didn't bring in, but I should have. And I just used scrap fabric. It's hideous, actually. If you were to look at it, you would never wear that garment for sure. But it helped me identify, what the shoulder size should be, the bust, the waist, the hips, all of that. So that's what I did first. And I just basted that together to get a good idea of what the sizing would be like. And then when I actually piece the jacket together, I'll probably have some further alterations that I'll make, but at least I know I'll be kind of on the right track. So let's see. Next up is to select the embroidery designs. Well, we have an awful lot of embroidery designs to choose from. I do, just like you do. You have things in your embroidery machine that come with your machine. I don't use them because I like to see my embroidery designs in software, and because the software I use are dime software, I don't get those machine designs over to my software. But goodness, here at Dime, we have tons of embroidery designs. And one of my favorite collections is Stream of Flowers. So as you take a look at the packaging on the left, and then just a handful of embroidery designs, right? There's 4, maybe a dozen, if even. And look at the beautiful display of quilting on the right, that red work quilt that you see there. What I love about these embroidery designs, Stream of Flowers, is they go together like a jigsaw puzzle. There's no hard lines. So if your placement isn't perfect, no one will ever know. They kind of, they curve in and out and connect and nest within each other. I also like the different amounts of texture that are in the embroidery designs. You have that big flower that is an open space, and that's accented with really tight little stippling, and then some other medium-sized designs. So let's go ahead and take a look at what you get when you purchase that collection. It's a download, so you could be stitching right now if you went and purchased that. It comes in 3 different sizes, 5x7, 7x12, and 8x12. So in each of those folders, you're going to find different folders. One is for the body, all like those 4 designs, and we're going to take a closer look. And then it has border designs, because this is really for a quilt, not a jacket, although you could finish a hem or the center front, with vertical quilting. And then it also has filler designs, tiny little flowers that if your placement isn't perfect, you just drop that in there and nobody will ever know it. It also has an embroidery design map. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. Well, why don't we first go into the software and I'll show you what they look like. It kind of looks a little confusing, right? But not really. So if you use our Embroidery Toolshed software, remember that's our free program that everybody can use. You can download it from our site for free, and you can open up this Stream of Flowers, the C2S file, which will give you our native file, meaning you can resize these designs till your heart's content if you do it in the C2S in Embroidery Toolshed. But you'll also notice that number, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, that number is actually artwork. So it's not stitches, and it will not stitch on your quilt, but it's a visual guide for you to know, okay, this is design 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so when they are stitched together, are we up or down? When they're stitched together in one color, look at that. You can't see where one design is and the where one design ends and the next one begins. And that's the beauty of Stream of Flowers. And it goes together 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the next row is 2, 3, 4, 1. And then the next, here, I'll show you. We have a PDF of that. So it's just a map. It's just a map. It's color-coded and number-coded. And as you work across your canvas from left to right, or even right to left, you just follow those numbers. And it makes it so easy to stitch a beautiful canvas. I love that. Just love that. Oh, hey, Carrie Cunningham's in the house. Hi, Carrie. Nice to see you here. I met you, in person down at Houston Quilt Fest. Although I've seen you online, and I know many of you have probably seen Carrie Cunningham. She's a great sewist also. I bet maybe she has made a quilted jacket. Not sure. Okay. So let's see. So that's Stream of Flowers, and that's the collection that I decided to use for my jacket. Now, where do we go next? Okay, well, the next thing to do is to take those embroidery designs and get them on the fabric and figure out where it's all going to go, on those jacket sections. So let's go over to software, and we'll go to B. So in my software, I sketched 2 garments, and we have drawing tools, and I'll just show you where they are. They're up here. Now, this is in Perfect Embroidery Pro, Or if you have My Quilt Embellisher, you could also use that program. These drawing tools are not available in the free program. This is in our paid program. But I just select the pen and then I use it to draw simple outlines of these garments. So my first attempt was on the left. And, you know, it kind of mimics the jacket pattern, right? I did put the sleeve in there just to make it look like a jacket, right? But as I was thinking about how this would look when I'm actually wearing it, I didn't want it to look like a quilt that was on my bed and I cut up and turned into a jacket. I mean, that's okay, right? But it wasn't the look I was going for. So I thought, well, if I have some contrasting fabric at the neckline or the bodice, you know, that creates a slimming effect on the figure. Because if you're like me, you know, female north of 50, way north of 50 years old, you know, adding bulk to your figure is probably not a goal, right? Quilted jackets, all those layers, probably not a goal. So I thought, okay, well, if I have an angle, you know, from the shoulder to mid chest, that can create a slimming line. Think of a V-neck. It's always slimmer on the figure than a crew neck. So same idea. That's my fashion tip for the day because I don't know much more. But anyway, so there we have it. Then I just start to bring in my embroidery designs. So I'll go into my folder of designs, and down here at the bottom we have, you know, color sequences first. Next is my library of designs, and then I clicked on stream of flowers, and here you can see I'm in C2S. So that's our native file. That's the file I always work in when I'm designing. And when I design, digitize my own designs, that's what I save it. And, you know, that's the C2S, the native file. And I am in the folder that is main body designs. I'll just show you what the border designs are. Here you can see. So we have, you know, outside edges, inside corners, and then we have horizontal, where, you know, if this was a quilt, you would be finishing a quilt in that fashion. And then we have these little filler designs. So extra little stipples, 4 rows of flowers, a trio of flowers here, and then a big flower and a couple small ones. But because I'm in C2S, I can resize these things all day long. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and drop my first design in place. And, you know, let's go ahead and work on this garment because this is the one that I actually wound up doing. So just bear with me a moment while I clean up this screen a little bit. And I'm going to lighten these fabrics so that they're easier to see. So I'll take this, the designs are easier to see. I'll just take that. There we go. So now you can see, here's my embroidery design. I'll go back in and I'm going to take number 2 in place. And that's just going to nestle right up there next to the other. Now, I'll give you another tip. When you're working on an artwork like this, and my jacket sketch is an artwork, I'm going to lock that. I still want to see it, but I'm going to lock it. So now I can click on there all day long and I won't be able to select it. So now I can select my embroidery design and bring that in nice and tight next to the other one. Now, why am I have it all the way over here on the left? Well, I'm going to start with a rectangle of fabric. And because you saw that map of how the designs go together, they look like they're on an angle, but they're going together in a horizontal row, and the next row down is a horizontal row. So I need to be able to have embroidery at the hip, right? So if I were to move these and just place it inside that armhole, when I go to my next row, it wouldn't line up because I would be trying to cover the fabric that has been extended to the left of the body. So, okay, that's enough of that. So next up is I'm going to take go back into the library, and then I'm going to take, I believe I start with number 2 again. Yep, that'll fit right here. And I fill this up as best I can. And then if I have to resize it, I grab all of the embroidery designs and resize it just a little bit to fill in that width or the length. And of course, when I'm making this sketch of the garment, I measure the length of the garment to make sure it mimics the pattern, the actual sewing pattern. There are other ways to design, in real life. So I could have taken a photograph of the actual pattern and loaded that as a backdrop into the software. But it was like a lot of work, right? And patterns are white, white, too hard to see. So anyway, I just use a sketch. It's close enough for me. So Linda Brooks, you want to know, all the quilting is done pre-construction. Absolutely. We're just starting on flat fabric, a quilt sandwich. And I'm going to show that to you. I guess we could do that next. Yes. So let me show that to you right now. How about we do that? So you're going to start with here's my quilt sandwich for the back. And now I apologize that it's, this kind of, this is grunge, this is Moda grunge. And this is the fabric that I really like. It's kind of a bark. It's a deep, deep blue with a kind of aqua brush on it. And I wanted to have a garment that would be wearable. But you'll notice that I have drawn the pattern outline onto the fabric. And I use a tailor's mark. Where is that? Under here. I use it's kind of like chalk or soap. And that's what I use on dark fabric. And on light fabric, I would use the Friction pen and trace my pattern. So here's the back. And I would literally, place this on the fabric and then trace around it, mark those armhole notches. And then I flip it over and do the same on this side, making sure, that my centers match and so forth. And then I know that's my guide, right? That's my canvas. I have to fill this area with embroidery. So I have already done 1, 2, and 3 on the upper part of the jacket. And now I'll go ahead and place template number 4. And of course, this material that I'm using, this is our print and stick target template paper. And so we'll go back over to software so I can show you how we print that out. And let's go ahead and I'll just get a new screen and I'll bring up number 4 because that's the one that we're working on. And here I can go to print preview to see what I'm going to print. And when I do that, I have options for settings. Widen this, make this a little bit larger. So I'll go into my settings. Now, what's important to me here is that number 4. I want to know when I have all these templates laying on my work surface, what design is this? Because that 4 is in its name. When I bring it up on my machine, I'm going to be able to see that number 4 in the name. I need a crosshair that's dead center. And of course, so in my settings, here's my choices. You can tell it how much margin you want around the design. That's kind of a printer thing. I just leave the default as is. And I most certainly want it in actual size. I want a crosshair. And I want the artworks. I don't need the color analysis because it's only one color. I don't need that, and that would come out on a second page. So I don't really care about that. You do want to hit realistic and stitches. You'll get a clearer image on your paper. So, and then we hit OK, and it will send it to your printer and print. And, then I would hit this icon and it would print. Now, I print it on our print and stick target template paper. So let's go back over and take a good look at that. So this paper comes like this, and you can feed this through inkjets or laser printers. And this plastic translucent material is on this carrier paper. Now, before I put it into the printer, on the wrong side, I write the word wrong. Because later on, when these are separated and you have several of these sheets laying around your work surface, you absolutely want to put this only on the side that it was originally on. And this paper is a little shinier then it's wrong side, but not much. And if you put it on the wrong side, you really can't separate it. So that's what I do. First thing I do, hit, right, wrong. Or if you're like me, there's a really good chance that you'll print on the wrong side. Surely I have, oh yeah, see, always. This happens all the time. So here's one that I printed in, I guess, did I print this in mirror image? Maybe. But first, I printed it on the wrong side. It happens to me all the time. So if I don't do that, then I take my marker and write wrong side so that I know, okay? All right, so here we are. Now we have number 4 in place. And it's perfectly fine that it's going to extend over the armhole. Now, I'm not real sure that you can see this, but my tailor's chalk, the line for the armhole is right in here. And part of my flower is going to be cut off. That's okay. It's okay. It's fine. It's fine. So let's see, we will, where are we at next? I guess before we get over to the machine, I'll see if there's any more questions. Aretha, you asked about what that chalk was, and it is tailor's chalk. But you could use regular street chalk. You can use soap, a bar of white soap, a sliver of it. Whatever you use, you should test first. But know that if you've made a muslin and you know that this garment is not going to be too small for you, then the marks that you are making will be in the seam allowance, and that won't be a problem. If you haven't made a muslin, there's a chance that those marks could be visible, and that will only happen on a garment that you have invested a lot of time and money and emotion in. So, and I know that from experience. So let's see. But these are really fun. Yeah. Jennifer Alexander, you like how we match the colors and numbers? Yes, me too. And if you have our software, you can do that too. Why don't I show you how to do that? Super easy. So over in software, here we are on the 4. So how I add an image or, artwork to a design is I go to notes, and this is in PEP, and I would write, number 4. Right? And then I hit apply, and it comes up as a tiny little note. Oh, well, and it didn't hit. You have to type. So let's see, number 4. I might have to actually hit apply. Hang on. There we go. And now I could color code that whatever color I want. If I want that to be purple and I want my thread to be purple, now it's all purple. So you can make your own notes on your own templates if you have our software. It's really very handy, and it helps you conserve your templates so you don't have to reprint them, because if you didn't make a notation on the template itself, you may not remember what file that actually is. Many of them look very similar, but as we resize and so forth, it's best to make a note right on there. Okay, so, all right, why don't we go over to the machine? If there aren't any more questions, let me just check before we go over there. You love the printable template, Dawn, and isn't it awesome? It is absolutely awesome. I love this. I don't know what I did without it. And the best part about it is not only is it translucent, it's adhesive. So here's template number 1, right? Look, that's staying there. And one of these templates will do an entire quilt for sure. So if you're just doing a single design repeat, definitely have enough tackiness on there, enough adhesive to stay in place and to be reused. Eventually, you'll get too much lint on it and it won't be reusable. When they're right off of the first time you pull it off the carrier, it may be so sticky that I often wrap it around my thigh and rub it on my jeans or whatever pants I have on and just get a little bit of lint on it so it's easier to separate later on. So, don't get hung up that it's so tacky. It's actually a good thing. It lasts a long time. Okay, and Betty Calder, you say that note tip is great. How did I not know that? I know there's so many secrets in software, and the only way you get good at software is using it. Just use it. You can't break software. Just get in there and play all day. Okay, so I have my machine all set up, and I have my number 4 embroidery design is on the machine. In my In my needle, I have exquisite 40 weight thread. I think I have number 444 on there, which is a beautiful aqua. And I have a matching bobbin in the bobbin case. Okay. So matching thread, top and bottom. And then I have an 80-12 sharp needle in place. I have my bottom frame of Snap Hoop Monster on the machine. And then I'm just going to place my garment. I've got to make sure that, you baste it a little bit, right? Pin baste it in just a couple spots, but this is a rather small canvas, so I don't really worry about basting it. And then I just have to make sure that I'm capturing the quilt batting and backing at the top of the hoop. And, I often cut my fabric just a little too short. I try to conserve fabric. I probably shouldn't do that. But anyway, here we are. We're going to be fine. And then I have my top, and I also have jumbo hoop guard positioned on the, okay, I have to stand in front of the camera, so pardon me while I do this. It's a physical event, right? Hooping. Okay, so a couple things to keep in mind. If you're going to have a horizontal line, like a seam on your garment, use it as a guideline to ensure that you are hoop straight. So the seam on the left side of the hoop hits at 17.5. And over here, it's at 16.5. So I am not square. So I'll just lift that a little bit and pull my fabric down until it is 17.5. And then just make sure that it's all nice and smooth. Now, we always want to make sure, especially that top hooping, that the backing fabric is smooth and in place and hasn't doubled over. And because I'm so chintzy on the top, I'm just going to take a moment to make sure it's in the right position. Okay, and then my machine froze. Why would that do that? Is that because I'm on camera? Is that the only time that happens? Oh my. Yeah, it won't do anything. Okay, so we'll go talk about some other things while I turn this off. Use the presser foot lifter. Oh my. Okay, we're going to turn that off and let it, you know how it has to reset. That'll take a moment. This is when you really need an extra hand here in the sewing room. Let's see. So a kneaded Tannenbaum. You have a little trouble getting, the magnets are strong, so you have problems getting your fabric straight. Well, we do have some solutions for that, and we have some new product coming that's really going to help with that. But first off, let's see if I can get that machine running, and I can show you some tips on how to do that. So we're going to go ahead and turn that back on, and we'll just let it rest a moment. See if I can, there we go. We'll get the hoop off, because you know it wants the hoop off while it does all its resetting. And let's see. Barb Tour, you love how easy it is to hoop with the magnetic hoops. Me too. Goodness, I would not be embroidering still this day, to this day, if we didn't have the magnetic hoops, because it makes it so easy. It really does. So let's go ahead back over and see if we can get it to wake up. And we'll try all that again. And, you would be really proud of me, because today, about 40 minutes ago, I turned on the machine and I hooped a scrap piece of fabric, and I ran the very same design just to make sure that the machine was threaded properly and everything was working fine. And look what Betsy did, right? Look what Betsy did. We'll call her Betsy today. Okay, so on my USB stick, I'll just go in there and find my design. And remember, it's number 4, and that's in the title. So that makes it easy to find. So this is SOF Hoop 4, easy to find. And then we'll just say, okay, and embroidery. And now we'll attach that. But hey, before we do, why don't I come back under the camera so I can help our friend who's having some trouble learning how to hoop straight. So I'm going to just lift this garment so you can see where the attachment is. The attachment is here, closest to my figure. And then I'm going to lift this off. So if you were trying to hoop and you wanted to ensure that you were square, straight in the hoop, I would have my template or this seam, and I would kind of fold up the template at that vertical crosshair and just feel that it's parallel with the frame. That's what I want to do. I want to see that it's parallel with the frame. And then I take my top frame and I place that perpendicular to the bottom frame and drop it in place. And then if I have a seam like I do here, I use that to see if I am evenly positioned from the right to the left. And I am. I'm at 16 and a half here and 16 and a half there. So that means if I'm straight here, then I'm going to be straight that way. So I'm just going to make sure, it's nice and taut, and then take it over to the machine and we'll stitch. I have to carefully move it, right? Holding the frame at the outside edges. Normally, if I were home, I would have my plastic magnet shield, and I would probably use that to transport it across the room. But right now, I'm good. Okay. And in we go. So we lift everything up so we can access that attachment and slide that on. We push the hoop by the attachment, not the frame, because if you push by the frame, there's a good chance you'll dislodge or separate that top frame from the bottom. Okay, and so now I have to move my design so that it's centered over that crosshair. This is why, to me, templates are so key. And I can tell you that templates are very precise, much more precise than a lot of the other widgets and bells and whistles you have on your machine. And now to take this off, we lift it from the back and peel it down like that, because you don't want to pull the thread out of the needle. So you just peel it nice and tight. Okay, now we'll lower the presser foot and maybe we'll bless it and hit go. All right, and it'll stitch. So there it goes. And see how fun it is, like that template? I just leave that on the quilt right there. I just let it stitch. And so this is, this will complete my first row at the top of the jacket, at the upper, the back shoulders right across the top. And then I'll advance my fabric to come down to the second row and stitch that using a template every single time. Yeah. Yep, every single time. Yeah, Betty Coley, it's helpful to see the problems, see us work through the problems. Oh, yeah, wow. My sister Marie and I, who used to work with me all the time, I would say, what are you doing today to her? And she goes, mistakes. I'm stitching mistakes. And, we would laugh, but it's true. Some days are just mistakes, right? It's very frustrating. But it's just part of life, right? It's just part of life. It's like when you're baking, it doesn't always come out so well. Okay. And so Jennifer Alexander, you use the corrugated plastic as a helper to hoop your fabric straight. Yes, some of our educators teach that you keep the plastic shield in place. You keep it underneath the frame. You put it on top of the metal frame, cover it with fabric, and then lay your top frame in place, and then just gently slide out that plastic shield. And that does work for sure. Mm-hmm. What's the largest snap hoop for your 6 needle? I believe that's an 8x12. If your machine is an accepts a standard 8x12, then we make that. Mm-hmm. And let's see, Dorothy, I am using the Tamarack Grainline Studios Tamarack jacket pattern, and you can rewatch this program and see that. I gave a lot of information about it earlier. So this is going to stitch. So, this is how many minutes? This is literally a 4-minute design. So to do 4, designs across the top, they're all about 4 minutes, maybe 3, maybe 1 is 5. But so, 16 minutes to just stitch that top row. I could do that whole jacket back. I'm going to need 4 rows. in, you know, what, an hour and a half. It's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. It's really fun. So we didn't really talk about fabric, did we? So let's go ahead back over to PowerPoint. Before we go over there, let me see where we are on. Okay, let's talk about fabric. So solid fabrics, and I would call this a solid because it's a kind of a blender, you know, that little swirl is pretty much tone on tone. And the geometric designs that you see are the embroidery designs. Now, you can see them on this garment, right? Especially if I were to stitch that in a contrasting color. But on print, you really lose an embroidery design or a quilting design. So there we go. As you can see on this printed fabric, you can't see that grid at all. So consider your fabric choices when you are selecting your fabric. Do you want all of the quilting to show, or are you really at quilting to add texture? Because, you know, that's two different things, right? Show quilts often add quilting designs in a little bit of a contrast color so that you can really see it. But if it's a jacket that you want to wear, maybe you don't want all of that quilting visible. So Peggy and Abram, yes, I am quilting on a quilt sandwich that's larger than my pattern pieces. So it's a large rectangle that's larger than my finished jacket back. And what I did was I laid my jacket back pattern on that quilt sandwich and traced around it. And then that told me where I was placing my embroidery designs to make sure I fill that canvas. And afterwards, after that's complete, then we cut it out. So do you have to adjust the tension to embroider on a quilt? No, I don't, because Esther, I use the same thread in the needle and the bobbin. So because I have two threads that are the same weight, it's a balanced tension on my embroidery unit with my embroidery bobbin case. As you know, when you do regular embroidery with your embroidery bobbin case, your top thread is pulled to the back of the work because your bobbin thread is a much lighter weight thread. But I'm using same thread, top and bottom, and I'm using our exquisite 40 weight. And the color I'm using, I believe, is 44.4, which is right here. This really pretty aqua on that fabric. And we'll get a closer look on that. Let's see. Roxanne said, when your machine froze, would it have rebooted if you hit the home button on the machine? You know, I'm not sure because it was totally grayed out. And really, Roxanne, I've never been able to do that unless I'm on a live. It's only happened twice, and both times were a live issue. Is there a snap hoop that's long and narrow for borders? Not yet. Not yet. That's all I can say. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to bring that back so you can take a look at it. I'll bring it under the camera so you can get a good look at it, because I want to show you that it's perfectly okay to let the quilting extend beyond the armhole here, right? Because my next row of quilting is going to have to be out in this area to hit the side seam. So if I had snugged this embroidery design just at the edge of the armhole opening, then the next row would not line up. So I'm just filling this whole rectangle, this whole canvas with quilting, and then I'm going to cut it out. So I think you can kind of see, right? That's where I've traced my jacket back. And the next thing I'll do is I will move to the next row. So I'll just kind of get that happening so we can see what that's going to look like. And then I'll show you the jacket sleeves and the bodice front and so forth. Now, the next design I'm going to use, because the schematic, the map that came with my downloadable collection told me that's when I do the first row, I'm going to start with 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm going to start the second row with number 2. And I can see how that just nudges right in there. Wonderful. Okay, so now I'm ready to hoop this row. Now, here's another time, another good example of lining up designs. So I have a seam right here. And here is my horizontal line on my crosshair, and they're really not parallel. So here, let me come up a little bit, get this closer to the camera, and I'll even get a ruler so you can see what I'm talking about. Because one of our friends talked about having trouble lining up embroidery designs in that hoop. So it all starts with the beginning. If you know, alignment is crucial, and it isn't always crucial, but sometimes it is. So here's a ruler that this is going to be hard to see, so many lines, but I have the edge aligned with my seam. And you can see here how this space is not even. So I'll change that. It's adhesive. I can just lift it and reposition it and make sure my fabric's nice and smooth, and focus on this area up here connecting in this space and making sure that I'm parallel. There we go. That I'm parallel with this seam. Now I'm good to go. So we'll go back into the hoop. And now look at the size of this design. This design measures, I believe, 10 1/4 by 8-ish. And I resized this to fit my garment because remember in the beginning of the program, I showed you I was an embroidery tool shed and I was using the C2S file to design my garment. And then I saved it in PES for my machine. But I'm using a much bigger hoop because that's going to give me plenty of wiggle room, so I don't have to get this crosshair perfectly dead center in the hoop. That's setting yourself up for frustration. So here we go. I'm going to place that frame perpendicular to the bottom. I can feel it underneath. I have a lot of layers happening here. And then I'll drop that down. And then I'm just going to pull on this fabric and make sure it's nice and taut all the way around. I also have somewhat of a pattern on this fabric. It is kind of muted, but it does have a vertical pattern to it. That's another guideline I can use to make sure I'm aligned with my fabric. If it looks, if you have stripes or some other type of vertical line, make sure they're parallel with the hoop as you advance the fabric. Okay, I think this is pretty good. We'll go back to the machine, bring up the the number 2 design, and we'll get that stitching. Oh, and this is why you don't ever hoop on a table full of paper. Okay, so we're going to get this back underneath the machine, underneath the needle. And again, remember, I'm always pushing on the attachment. I do help it along with this hand, but the force is on the attachment, not on the frame itself. And now I have a big roll here, so I'll just kind of get that under control, roll that up. Remember, I have my hoop guard in place, so this is only going to fall so far, right? This hoop guard is going to keep this roll at bay and not allow it to fall into the sewing field. Okay, and if you're like me, you're going to give it one final tug. Another good thing to do is to touch the sewing field and make sure there isn't another design, some bulky fabric underneath. So I'm going to delete my current design and go back into my USB stick and find number 2. And here we go. And that comes up on the screen. And we'll touch set and embroidery. Okay, so I want to make sure this design matches my template. Is it in the correct orientation? Like, is that flower in the top left corner of the template? And it is, so I'm happy about that. Next thing I need to do is I need to get my needle dead center in that crosshair. So I'll go to layout and move. And looks like I moved down a little bit and over to the left. And now my friend who was a little concerned about getting straight in the hoop. I don't know that you're really going to be able to see this, but I hope you can. So on my machine, on this machine, I'm able to go into the trace feature and touch trace. And instead of going all the way around the design, I just want to go to the top center and the top bottom. And I keep my eye on the foot and the template's in place. And I want to make sure that my foot is traveling along that vertical line on the crosshair. And if it is, then I know I'm dead center. So let's see. It's not too bad. Now, sometimes if your template is cut like mine is, make sure that you keep that foot up, that you don't drag the template. Now, it's not perfect. I'll do it one more time. So it's skewing a little bit this way. So I'll just lift this and pull my fabric just a little bit to the left. And I can test that again. Now on this garment, you've already seen how these embroidery designs go together. They're very forgiving, right? You saw that. It's not like straight lines that have to connect perfectly. So I'm going to be happy with this, and I'm just going to remove my template. And remember, we peel that back kind of carefully, and I have to get it way down underneath that foot and pull it off, and then we can just store it here temporarily. And now, another thing I could do is do the horizontal travel, and even especially if I'm on a seam, then that would tell me that I'm fine. So there you have it. So that's a couple good tips on making sure you're square in the hoop. Okay. Does the quilt sandwich make your jacket thick? Yes, it will definitely make it thicker than if it was just one layer. So you have to experiment with some batting. Like if you've made quilts, right, and you have them in your house and you always use the same batting, wrap yourself in one. Kind of make a sleeve, just hold it up, see what that feels like. Is it comfortable? Is it too bulky? You know, everybody uses different types of batting, and we all have different favorites, right? I like wool batting, believe it or not, in Texas, but I like that because it's really lightweight. So it's not going to add any weight to the garment. And it also allows a beautiful loft in the quilting. And because it's 100% wool, it breathes beautifully. I sleep under a quilt that's, that the quilt sandwich is made with wool batting. But lots of people like cotton. And I had said earlier, next week, I'm going to show you a jacket that has cotton flannel as the batting so that it doesn't have all that bulk. It's a lot thinner. So that depends on what you could do, whatever you decide to do. Let's see, can these quilting patterns be put together in more than one way? Yeah, actually they can. They can. And it's just like it's not exactly like a jigsaw puzzle, because a jigsaw puzzle only goes together in one fashion, one way. But you can play with it for sure. They're really fun. Let's see. And Ann Philbeck, you like long arming with wool? Yeah, see? And Reen, her friend, uses wool batting and all of them. And how do you wash wool batting? Just like regular batting. Once it's in the quilt, I treat it like it's cotton. I don't even worry about it. I have quilts at home that have been laundered and laundered and laundered with wool batting, and it's just fine. Okay, so let's see. Barb Turi, do you have to dry clean? No, you don't. I just put it right in the laundry machine. Now, that's a good point that you bring up. So there's two schools of thought on pre-washing fabric, right, for quilts. Some people swear by it because they're concerned about fabric bleeding onto, from one fabric to the other. And that's a good concern for sure, a worthy concern. And for garments, I always do pre-wash all the fabrics because I don't want them to shrink and then not fit after I've made the garment, right? I actually don't worry about the batting though. I never wash it prior. I don't know, just don't pay attention to that. Now, many people, when they do piecing, they don't like to pre-wash because they like the sizing that's in the fabric because it gives crisper seams and makes it easier to work with than laundered fabric. And I do agree with that. But if you are going to do a jacket quilted jacket that has blocks, I think I would still pre-treat all of the fabrics. Yeah, and Sharon Crowder says, you have even unbleached muslin as a batting will give more of a spring weight jacket, and it still quilts nicely. It does quilt nicely. It will not give you the loft, and I'm going to show you some loft in a minute, you know, that a batting would, but it won't pucker and it won't bunch up. You'll still be able to see that it's a quilting design for sure. Ann Philback, she puts all of her quilts on the line and dries it that way and washes it on gentle. Very good. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. All right. Now that's done already. Can you believe that? And one of the beautiful things about all of Stream of Flowers, they are one tie, you know, they start stitching and there's no tie offs until it's over. So there you have it. That's number 2. Goodness, I'll be done this in, you know, about 40 minutes. No big deal. We're not going to do that here though. So now let's go ahead and take a look at, I'm going to pull some of these parts off and we'll take a look at the bodice. The front jacket. So here, now you might be wondering, I'm going to flip this over so you can see the actual quilting. Oh, there's a lot of white. But you can see here, see the loft in this big flower? So that's the wool batting. That's the beautiful loft that you get from wool. And it also compresses down very nicely in these heavily stitched areas, like in this tiny micro stippling. It is compressed down and allowing the open areas of those other flowers to lift. And that's what gives you that texture that we all love. So if you're like me, now to finish these garments, most instruction, many quilters that you see making jackets on the web are advising to use binding and binding all your seams. Well, I have a really nice serger, and I have decided to just serge all my garment sections so that I don't have extra bulk on the seams. Now I'm going to do a little truth be told here. So when I was making my canvas, quilting these canvases for the right and left bodice, I didn't go all the way to the edge. So here you can, let me see, got to get under the camera. Oh, well, that's because this is all flipped around. Okay, so here do you see all this open area here that didn't get quilted? All in here. So no problem, right? I can go in and I can stitch that free motion. Oh, and you're probably like, oh, that's so hard. And you don't have to, I don't know how to do that. Well, you know what? This is in the hip area. So believe me, I want that compressed down as much as possible. I don't need to add any more loft to that area. So I went in and I just free motion quilted. Then that's all in here. And, it's almost invisible on the right side of the jacket, almost invisible. But it does give the same amount of texture to this area of the garment as the rest of the garment. So if your designs don't go exactly to the edge, don't worry about it. You can go back in and just add some filler stippling. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, you can't really even see all my quilting from the right side. And that was my intention. I really didn't want this to look like a quilt, that I cut up that was on the bed. I wanted it to be wearable and just have some lovely interest at the neckline, which it does. And let's go ahead and flip that so we can talk about symmetrical quilting, because we do want to get this to, kind of flow, right? So that it looks like it was all planned and it is actually in mirror image of each other. You can see these flowers flank, opposite, as does this really fun oval shaped area. Now, remember, I used Moda Grunge fabric, which has these washed areas that kind of, are a lot lighter than the deeper, darker areas. So that just adds more interest. But, that's your choice. You could go with a solid fabric like this and really show all the quilting with high contrasting thread. That's your choice. That's your choice. But isn't it fun? Okay, so what else do we have to do? I think we kind of hit everything I wanted to get to today. Planning the quilting, we talked about all that, right? Yeah, here's my back. So again, I did the same sketch of the jacket back, and now you can see how much overflow quilting is going to happen on the right and left of the garment. I could have gotten away with 3 vertical rows, with 3 columns of quilting, but it would have left a lot of open, unquilted area at the at the side seams. So I said, oh, well, I'll just start with a little bit of a larger piece of fabric and just quilt the whole thing. What fabric did you use for the bottom layer? Actually, I used Emoda Grunge again. So let's get a look at that. This is a really very lightweight beige, and I had quilt backing, 110 inches wide, and I had a large amount of it. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to use that. I am all about staying, using up what I have at home and trying to make the best of it. So that's what I used, and it's fine. It's a nice quilting fabric. It feels good. But, feel the hand of the fabric when you're selecting your fabrics. Like, I love batiks for sure, but batiks are pretty tightly woven. So I don't know how that would really translate into a garment. It would be fine for applique, maybe smaller sections, but a whole garment might be just a little too stiff to wear. So, experiment with that. Feel the fabric in your hand. Is it something you're going to enjoy wearing? Okay. And Dawn, you love grunge. I know, I love the grunge too. I love the grunge in the reds and all of them, actually. I love all the grunge for sure. And that was a great design concept that somebody came up with for sure. Okay. And Joanne Banco said, lining fabric might be nice for a slippery backing. I did think about using rayon Bemberg or something like that, but frankly, I don't know. I just wanted to get it done. It's what I had in house. But, do think about that. If you have a slinkier fabric that you could use for the lining, it will make putting the garment on easier. So think about that for sure. Okay, well, next week, we have 2 lives next week, 2 lives. But this week, we have Snap Hoop Monster on sale, and I hope that you'll take advantage of that. They only go on sale a couple times a year, and this is one of those times. So if you've had your eye on a Snap Hoop Monster, or you've been hoping to get a second or a third or a fourth, this is the time. Goodness, I know I have them in all the sizes, and I love it. I just love those hoops, and I know many of you do too. And if you're using your Snap Hoop Monsters, we thank you for taking advantage of this great product and using it for sure. Okay, so next week, well, before we get to next week, we have on the house. Oh my goodness, this is your free design for this week, and that is the Celtic knot. Isn't it beautiful? It is just a lovely design. It's only 2 colors. It has that beautiful green, and then the hedge green, or the black is the outline, and it stitches beautifully. Those satin stitches are just gorgeous. You're going to love that. You're going to love that. And look at all these nice comments. Jennifer Alexander, you love the software programs with Ashley. They're awesome. And so does Joanne Abanko. Love hearing that. Awesome. Also, we do like it. Absolutely. And so Amy Harris, we have a compatibility chart on our website. So if you go to dzgns.com and just search for a hoop compatibility chart, you'll find all the hoops that we make for FOF and the sizes that they come in. Okay, so yes, next week on Tuesday, the 7th, is Ashley, and she's going to be talking about text in embroidery. You're going to enjoy that. Boy, she is one talented lady. And then on Thursday, I'll be back with part 2 of quilted jackets, and we're going to explore just a little bit, talking about how you could incorporate blocks into a jacket. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you'll take advantage of this week's special Snap Hoop Monster on sale. And next week, we'll be back with more tips for part 2 of the quilted jacket.